Hello everyone, and welcome to a comparison of all the different AI providers from ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude to Plotly Studio. We're going to be comparing these four different AI systems to try and get some insight into which one would perform best to build interactive dashboards. So this is more geared to those that are doing research or those that work in data science. But we're going to be comparing these generic AIs to one that is specifically designed for data science, which is going to be Plotly Studio. So with this, as you can see on the screen, I have ChatGPT up, Gemini, and Claude. All of these I'm paying extra for their pro subscription. So ChatGPT I'm paying $20 a month, Gemini I'm paying $20 a month, and for Claude I'm paying about $100 or $200 a month. With that, I threw in a CSV file to each of these prompts, and we're just going to start it off, and we're going to let each one of these go through the process, and we'll see which one is first done. Then I'm going to move over to Plotly Studio. Over here, there is a drag and drop. So I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to be dropping in the same CSV file that I'm using on all the other ones. This is going to be on jobs. So I'm going to give it the same prompt. Go over here, copy the prompt, go back into Plotly Studio and paste it. All right, so Plotly Studio works a little bit different than the other ones. They are all still processing. Not one is done yet. AIs are, going through their analysis and just kind of starting to build it out. Plotly Studio uses an outline to structure the dashboard prior to it fully building everything out. So it works a little bit different than these other different AI systems. So it looks like Gemini was the first one done. And then it looks like ChatGPT just finished and Claude is finishing up. But in the meantime, we're not done. We can't actually see what any of these actually look like or if they will even work. So for ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, it just gives us code. So I moved ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini over to my IDE, but each one of them had their own issues. They weren't using the most up-to-date Dash release. They were using a previous 2.18 release and not the 3.0, which is a pretty substantial difference between them, especially now that Dash is moving into 4.0. So it's about 2 generations behind within the Dash framework when trying to build out its code. So with that, it took a few tweaks. It didn't take too long. Another thing that I noticed is for Claude and Gemini, at the very top, I'll go into Gemini real quick, and at the very top, I needed to add this way of loading in the data set because the way that it was doing, it wasn't providing an encoding for how it was reading the CSV, and it was causing a lot of errors. So none of these were really working out of the box. But what I am here to articulate is let's just see how they rendered. So after I was able to dive into the code and do a little bit of bug fixing and get it all set up, let's just start with ChatGPT. Okay, ChatGPT used 172 lines of code to generate its application. Okay, Gemini used 168 lines of code, and Claude used the most amount of code, which was like 552 lines of code. And the result of the three is as follows. ChatGPT is on the left-hand side, and we can see that relatively, I feel like it did an all right job. I don't think that anything here, Alaska, that's good. It highlighted Alaska and it removed the other ones. So the filters are working. We could dive into other filters and they're kind of working. So yeah, it did break it down. I could zoom into the graph. I don't know how accurate it is because they all kind of seem like they're the same color, at least for each county as it displays on that map. Then we have the top counties, and if you look at counties, these are all states. So I don't think that ChatGPT did a good job of understanding how to create this chart because California isn't a county. And then distribution of value, this chart doesn't look useful at all. So I would give this a failing grade. I don't think that the distribution of value tells us anything. It also used data tables, and this has been archived. It isn't Plotly's recommended tabling system. It still works, but it isn't the best option. I would rather it have used -AJ Grid. So moving over, I wouldn't give this a passing grade. Maybe a D if an F. I'd say a D. I'd give this a D. So let's look over to Gemini. Gemini, I think you get an F. It only created 2 graphs, as you can see here. It didn't create a table or anything for us. It at least did label that this is by state, so it did get that correct. But the top, the one where it's supposed to show the actual map, this doesn't do anything. This is definitely an F. I would say this is a failing grade. I would not want to present this to a board of directors or anybody within a company because I feel like they would think that I did a terrible job. I wouldn't use this. This isn't passing in my opinion. Moving over to Claude. Claude used the most amount of code. We have a few graphs here. I'll kind of resize it to make it a little bit easier to see. This didn't align this correctly. So for the navigation, it should all be on the same row. It didn't do that. I don't like that. And then some of these breakdown of industry distribution, fire, I don't know if it's in the data set. That's the reason that that's labeled like that, but that doesn't really make sense to me. Unemployment percentage, 7 to 3. That's pretty easy to just from a glance see what percentage it is. Top 15 states. It did get the states, it's not counties. And then states with the highest and lowest employment changes. That's also pretty useful. So with that, we could dive into this just to make sure that this works. I'll just go into Alabama. And yeah, it changed the graph. Arkansas, it changed the graph again. So I would give this a B. I think that this is a passing grade. I think that Claude did relatively well for just given what it was given. There are a few things I'd like to change. Like I don't like the labeling of the x-axis right here. And overall, I would have chosen a different map. I would have done a few other things differently. But for what it is, one shot, one go, that's what we were able to create. So let's compare it with Plotly Studio. So this is the dashboard that Plotly Studio was able to create. And I think that just from a quick glance, it looks much more professional than the other 3 LLMs as they went about trying to build out a dashboard. This has a collapsible filter at the top, which is nice. We'll see if it works. I will use Alaska for the reference, and yeah, it changed everything to represent Alaska. So right off the bat, it works. The filters do, which we were not able to see from all the other builds. We have the top row, which gives us a good indicator of from a glance what the data set is going to be telling us. Individually, it's compartmentalizing each individual graph. So as it goes about building out each one, you can just click on this edit button and it will only edit that specific graph, which is nice functionality. Where all the other LLMs, it's a one-shot thing where it builds it all out at once. This one, you can redefine just specific areas just through prompting it. So for example, this would be a good reason. I don't think that this covers all of the different sectors. So if I wanted to improve this, I could go over here. I could just remove this specification of these 3 and I could just remix it. And it will go about building out a new pie chart based on the categories and the filters, and it won't stay solely to just those 4 categories, but it will expand out further. So it takes a second to rebuild, but I'll let that do its thing, and yeah, we'll just kind of continue looking through. So overall, I would give this a passing grade, B plus if not an A, for what it was able to do in one shot. Depending on who you are and what you're trying to do with AI, having a focused AI on data science could be beneficial. And for those that need to dive into Excel files and want to quickly build out dashboards, this is a valuable tool, which I highly recommend using, at least checking out, because it's free. At least to get into Plotly Studio, throw in your own data sets and all of that, you can do that right away. There is paid functionality within Plotly Studio and Plotly Cloud, but that's later down the road, and we have videos which talk about that. But for what you get out of the box compared to what I was paying in the subscriptions of the other LLMs, I think that this has a lot to offer. And yeah, with that, we have a lot of videos that dive into Plotly Studio and Plotly Cloud and all the other different Plotly offerings. So check them out, and yeah, like and subscribe if you found this useful. Thanks for watching.